Hey everybody, Dr. LeGrand here, and today we're going to talk about the ultimate supplement guide to eliminating your ADHD symptoms. So, anytime I'm seeing a patient that is coming in for ADHD, it becomes very complicated as far as like which are the best supplements. You probably experience trying lots of different supplements, but not necessarily working for you. And that's probably because you're going about it wrong. And so, I'm going to go through pretty much like four main categories. So let me know in the chat if you experience this. First category of supplementation we're going to talk about is motivation, focus, and energy issues. That's one category. Then we're going to talk about memory and recall issues. That's one category. And then depressed and unmotivated issues. And then stress and sleep issues is another category of supplementation we're going to be talking about. So let me know in the chat if you experience that. So first one is motivation, focus, and energy issues. Probably a lot of you guys on here probably experienced that. Let me know in the chat. But when you go about this, whenever I'm testing people to determine what are going to be the best types of supplements are going to help with motivation, focus, and energy, generally these are the test results that I will see come back in the supplementation that I will use. The first thing that is very common that I do see is typically these two things. Is going to be phenylethylamine, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter that is responsible for motivation, focus, and in some cases, energy. And also tyrosine, because tyrosine is what does help make dopamine. And so, but phenylethylamine is another excitatory neurotransmitter responsible for also motivation drive. So the supplementation that we use here is two things. One is DL phenylalanine. Okay. And typically when we're looking at D-L-phenylalanine, how much do we need to use? Typically, this is going to be anywhere from about 400 to even all the way up to 4,000 milligrams a day, depending on the severity in the case. That's usually what we're going to be using. Now, when it comes to tyrosine, that we need to, just like this patient, this case study, their tyrosine levels were low. This is also what can help with motivation. And so, but I don't just use just tyrosine. I like using N-acetyltyrosine. And so using N-acetyltyrosine, that one is going to be more the easier absorbed type of nutrient to increase your tyrosine levels. And so usually with that case, I'm going to use about, let me spell it correctly, N-acetyltyrosine. And as far as the dosage goes, typically I'm also going to do about 400 to about 1,500 milligrams per day. Now, again, depends on the severity in your situation, how deficient are you, and how often do we need to do that, okay? So those are two. The next set is if you truly are low in dopamine, then we definitely need to address that. And also the breakdown of dopamine, so Dopac and 3-MT. So typically, there's a couple things that we use instead of just only using N-acetyltyrosine to help improve that. But we also want to use something like L-Dopa. But how do you get L-Dopa? So it's called meconiparines. Okay, and typically the dosage you want to use with meconiparines, see it's EI, is going to be anywhere from about 200 to even all the way up to about 800 milligrams a day. Again, this is going to depend on the severity. This is why we do testing to see, okay, how high of a dose do we need to do it? Okay. Another few things that I do like using is L-theanine is a big one. As far as the dosage on that one, this is going to be about 200 to 500 milligrams twice a day. BID is what we call it, so twice a day. Usually about morning and night is usually when I'll be using that. So those are going to be the best ones to use. Now, there's other things that can also impact dopamine. I'll talk about that in a second. But another reason of why motivation and focus are an issue is also because you probably are experiencing very low energy. Let me know in the chat if you are feeling not only physically low energy, but more importantly, probably more mental low energy. Like, are you mentally drained, burnt out? Let me know in the chat. Because if that's the case, I would say about 92% of the people that I do test tend to actually have low cortisol levels versus spiked. Probably because just adults with ADHD, they just get that mentally burnout state. And so in this case, when we see cortisol levels are low throughout the entire day, we want to use something called adrenal desiccated. Okay. And typically I will use that about first thing in the morning and then midday. Typically, highest dose in the morning, especially if the cortisol levels are low. This can help improve cortisol, help improve energy, focus, and motivation. So we'll use that first thing in the morning and also midday. Okay. Typically about morning, I'll probably do about 2 to 3 tablets, and then midday, usually about just 1 to 2. Now, some cases it might be only it's low just in the morning, in the afternoon, so we'll increase that. But sometimes we will see it spiked, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. So the other thing also to really keep in mind is about certain vitamins and micronutrients that can be deficient. And vitamin D is a big one, and that can be a culprit to your low energy, but it also can be an issue for the pathway here. So going from tyrosine to L-DOPA could be the reason why dopamine levels are low, because vitamin D levels are low because they're responsible for helping making L-DOPA. Then, of course, L-DOPA helps make dopamine. So we want to make sure we're checking that. And if you are low in vitamin D, that's another supplement I like to use. And so usually if you are low, I will start about 10,000 IUs combined with K2 because it's easier absorbed. That we're not overdoing it on that case. But for about 3 months, we don't want to overdo it. And then usually I might go down to a maintenance dose, about 5,000 IUs. And then about spring, summer months, we might take a break from it because you should get more from the sun. So just depending on the situation. Okay. The other one that's also really important when it comes to specifically different other vitamins is vitamin B6. This one is really responsible for a lot of the issues that you're probably experiencing when it comes to, if I had to pick one vitamin, when it comes to your lack of motivation, focus, and energy issues, is because P5P, which is the activating form of vitamin B6, is responsible for every step of the process that we've just been talking about. If that's low, it's very hard to make these different things like tyrosine, L-DOPA, to dopamine, phenylethylamine, all these things that we've already been talking about. So if that's low, that's going to be an issue. So we want to make sure, if we want to check that, see if it's an issue. And in this case, usually we'll be about do 10 to 50 milligrams per day, depending on the severity. Okay. Is this making sense so far? Let me know in the chat if this is making sense. And then, of course, if you have any questions, I will ask questions. Answer questions at the end of this. So you want to stick around for that. Okay. Now, what if you are low in everything? Because I see that does happen where you can be low in everything. It's kind of more rare case, but does happen. Just like this patient, they're low in everything. So in this case, when I see this, to kind of like cut down on how many supplements you're taking, this is when I will use combos if it makes sense. So you probably say, wow, there's a lot of supplements to take, but sometimes we can get a supplement that has everything that we need in order to fix this. So if we're in this case, where also norepinephrine and epinephrine levels are low, this can impact stress, but it also can impact your focus and motivation. So in that case, I do like this one. It's called Dopatone Active for a few reasons, because we've already talked about this, vitamin B6, right? So that's probably impacting this whole pathway. So we need to incorporate vitamin B6. It has also mecunopurines, which helps with the L-DOPA. It has DL-phenylalanine, so phenylalanine levels. It also has N-acetyltyrosine, so it helps with tyrosine. It also has phenylethylamine in it, right? It also has alpha lipoic acid, which helps with this whole process. Also with norepinephrine and epinephrine. So it helps every area. That's why I really like this one. But I won't use this if some cases where these things aren't low and maybe they're elevated. So it wouldn't be a good situation to take Dopatone Active. But I do like using this one when I do see patients that are typically low in most of these categories. So that's a really good one to use. Now, I get this is really complicated. There's a lot of information. So if you'd like my help to help with your supplementation stack and also order lab tests for you and help with your ADHD situation, you could book your first appointment with me in the description below. Find that in the description. All right. So now, next is let me know in the chat if you have issues with memory or memory recall, like you're forgetting where your keys are, or you're forgetting people's names, or you're in the middle of conversation and you forgot what you guys were talking about. Let me know in the chat if that is your issue, because this is usually what I commonly see, especially if you are adults and you're getting also to age about 40. This is what I typically will see will be low and what could be the culprit and what supplementation you should be doing. And so, first one would be choline levels. So, choline helps build acetylcholine. Very responsible. It's a very important neurotransmitter as well. It also impacts memory significantly. So, usually you want to use something like phosphatidylcholine. That's something I would supplement. That's like a good one if you're low in choline levels, and that can make a big difference. The other one would be if you're low in serine levels. This also can impact memory, and it could be the reason for your memory issues. And so you would supplement phosphatidylserine. So phosphatidylserine. Okay. Now, the other one that we've already talked about, but this does also impact memory and memory recall, is phenylethylamine. So if that is the case, then we want to be, like I was talking about before, is supplementing DL-phenylalanine. And then also supplementing phenylethylamine, also known as PEA. So you can also supplement that as well. So those two things can also help a lot with memory. There's a lot of other reasons that could be memory issues, and this is usually different micronutrients. But I'm not going into detail about that. But these are like the big ones that I do typically see when it comes to memory issues, memory recall, and those are the ones to be looking out for. Now, let me know in the chat if you are experiencing where you feel more depressed and unmotivated, like you're having more of those depressive symptoms and unmotivated, because this is probably what I see more common of the issue when I do tests and what supplementation can help with this. And that would be is that your serotonin levels are low and the breakdown of serotonin. So if that's the case, typically there's two things, or well, there's more than two things. There's one, it could be that the tryptophan needs to be addressed. So we can supplement tryptophan or 5-HTP. Okay, so 5-HTP or also L-tryptophan is some ones that you can supplement. Okay. Now, another one that also can really help with serotonin is L-theanine, as well as rhodiola. Okay, rhodiola rosea is another really good one to also be supplementing. Now, another one that can also be the reason of the depression is sometimes I will see where iron levels are really low, and so it's hard to bring oxygen nutrients to the brain, and so therefore you can feel more depressed, low motivation, and so definitely want to supplement iron if you see that your iron levels are low. And vitamin B12. So vitamin B12 not only can impact depressive symptoms and being unmotivated, but it also can impact your energy too, which also can lead into depressive symptoms too. So if you're low on vitamin B12, that's another really big one. Now I get this is a huge list. So if you want, there is a link in the description where you can download my ultimate ADHD guide that goes over all these and even more. So that way you don't have to write all this down these notes. You can get that in the description below. Okay, let me know in the chat if you're also having issues with stress. Very common with people with ADHD. It impacts your focus, your motivation, and your energy, or even sleep issues. This is also very common amongst people with ADHD. Let me know in the chat. So if you're in this situation, what I commonly see is a few things. One is a different neurotransmitter that can be impacted, and that is your GABA levels. Also, possibly glutamate and glycine that helps make GABA. And so, if that's the case, we can supplement directly GABA, okay, to help support that. But sometimes it's either glutamate or glycine that is low. So, we want to supplement maybe L-glutamate, or I mean, sorry, L-glutamine or glycine. So those are also two ones that can help with stress, because GABA is like when those GABA levels are low, you're going to feel more stressed, anxious. So that's why you want to maybe supplement both of those. Okay. Another one is also it could be the opposite. Sometimes GABA levels can be elevated. And in that case, we want to use something like L-theanine. Okay, to help kind of neutralize that, bring it into more healthier balance. And then the next one here is sometimes we think everything's always low, but also serotonin can be spiked. It's what we call serotonin syndrome. So if that's the case, L-theanine is also helpful with that. And you're like, wait, Dr. Legrand, I thought you said you use that to elevate it. So L-theanine is really great if it's high or low. It's a great neutralizer. That's why I like really L-theanine. Um, Also, even rhodiola can help with this too. And sometimes what we have to do is start looking at the source. So sometimes it might be because you're on medications that are causing this too. And you might be doing some other supplementation might be also elevating it too much as well. So that's why we have to be really careful and doing testing to see what is contributing to your anxious stress, agitation, and also impacting your sleep. And this could be the culprit. It also could be dopamine. So dopamine levels could be too high. So if that's the case, then also we need to incorporate something like L-theanine because it does the same thing. Helps. It's a great neutralizer to help with that. But and also seeing if your medications are too high. And usually that a lot of times that is the case. That's causing agitation, irritation, and stress. But another reason it could be is this right here is the breakdown of dopamine. Same with the breakdown of serotonin. Because if it's not being broken down, it's going to elevate and cause it's like almost like the filtration process has gotten clogged up, and so therefore it's making too much. So usually in that case, there could be several reasons, but a good common one I see is because vitamin B3 levels are low. And if you see right here, vitamin B3 is what helps break down dopamine. It's also what helps break down serotonin right there. So that might be the case is because you're low in vitamin B3 levels. Now, another reason of why you might feel stress and also not getting good quality of sleep is because your cortisol levels are spiked, just like how this patient was. And so what we do in this case is this is when I do like using ashwagandha, is when I do see this spiked. But also rhodiola does also help lower cortisol. So that's when I would incorporate it, is to lower your cortisol is using a combo of this. There's also something called cortisol manager that has ashwagandha and a few other herbs that are really good for lowering cortisol. So that way you're more calm state, so stressed. There's also another one called tension ease that really does help with this as well. But yeah. Okay. So hopefully this is making sense. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat about this. But hopefully this helps you understand about how to go about with supplementation, how I structure it, and go about helping eliminate these symptoms, because we need to understand what is the root cause to know which are going to be the best supplements to eliminating the ADHD symptoms that you're experiencing. So if you would like my help and get the same kind of results like my ADHD patients have, I'd love to help you out. All you got to do is just click on the link in the description below to book your first appointment with me. Basically, we go in depth. I'll look over your medical history, determine what would be the best labs, and understand the challenges and what would be the best action plan to helping with your ADHD situation. So all you got to do is just click on the link in the description below, and look forward to meeting with you and working with you and helping you out. Thank you guys so much for attending. I'll see you guys in the next live stream. Thanks. Bye.